Hi, Karen. Happy Monday. So wonderful to see your face. Yeah. Happy mid-September, late
Ooh,
September.
ha- Katie, happy day of the week in a month.
Yes.
That is where I am at right now. As usual, it is wonderful to see you and to start another week with you. I got the biggest compliment today from Vanessa, who we, of course, need to have on at some point, my colleague, who said that she put our Johanna episode on. Listeners, our last episode, if you've not heard it, you have to. Put it on, and then it was the perfect way to start the day.
Oh, I love that. That's so nice. Thank you, Vanessa. I would love to meet Vanessa over Zoom. That sounds amazing.
She's so great.
Oh, I love
Yes.
that. Yeah, our last episode was great. I talked to my mom today and she was like, "Oh, I loved it." And I was like, "Really?" And she's like, "Yeah, I especially loved the part where everybody, I know if you haven't listened yet, just go back to the last one, but it's about like her the negative voices in her head, like that like counsel, like she has like very specific thoughts around that, which
Yes.
actually was like somewhat playful. I kind of liked it."
Super into it. Yes.
Yeah. That's awesome. Okay, so today is very exciting because we have a very, very special guest, one that all of you listeners know and love. Ginger Buddha is here. But before we bring her on, Karen, I would just love to talk with you about this topic. This is something that you and I have been batting around for a while, and we haven't really addressed head on for many reasons. I don't know. I'm excited to finally be here and doing it.
I completely agree. Yes. And I love it because I feel like it's like it reminds me like that setup reminds me, in the sitcoms would be like on a very special facts of life. And it was like somebody got an abortion. Do you know what I
Yes.
mean? It was just like,
Yes.
or like somebody I feel like oh my gosh, what was the show? Family Ties. Like
Mm,
somebody died or had like a drug problem, like the sitcoms would do this like on a very special. And I feel like that today about Ginger Buddha, who's like usually our like fun Barbie Galentine's Day friend. And like today, like Ginger Buddha's here as like an actual professional, like an
yeah.
actual expert in her field. Like, oh, right. You're not
Yes.
just our party friend.
Yes, exactly. This is the of course I'm not okay facts of life where Tori comes on as the founder and CEO of Chicago Super Sitters. And friends, Tori is someone that you all should know beyond the Ginger Buddha persona because she's incredible, as you already know. But really, though, like this is a different combo. Like if you've been tuning into our Galentine's Day episodes, our Barbie episodes, all of those, our DNC episodes, like all of it. Like there's so many that Tori has been so amazing on. Those are all incredible, and this is not one of those. Like this is super intense, honestly. It's a really important topic, which is childcare. And I think one of the reasons why I have been hesitant to talk about it, Karen, is because I don't have children and I don't have children by choice.
Correct. 1,000%. And I not only don't have children by choice, I am not, my romantic life does not lend itself to like, oops, having children. Like, I would
Right.
really have to fucking want them to have them. Right. And so, yeah, it's something we haven't talked about. And fortunately, we not only have an expert in our lives, we have an expert with a podcast in our lives. So, Katie, I'm going to let you, I don't know if if we're ready to bring Tori out of the green room, i.e., like just off of mute, but like,
Yes. Let's do it. Let's do it. Okay, Tori, welcome back to the pod in a professional capacity. This is so nice to
Hello.
chat with you. I can't wait to hear everything you have
Hello.
to say.
Thank you so much. I was just about to make a comment about Ginger Buddha in the third person and then realized halfway through the thought that it was going to be very weird and not to do that. So it's very nice to, it's very nice to be on as Tori. It sort of feels like coming on for the very first time. I'll be honest. Usually don't use my serious voice. I'm in my upper register. So I thank you for having me on in this. I'm always very excited to talk about this. Anyone who's known me for longer than 5 minutes has heard me talk about this stuff. So I'm really thrilled to do it with you both like this um, on my favorite podcast of all time. So thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Can you tell us, can you do a little mini intro of your own? Like, because it would be really helpful so that people know where to find you, what your
Mhm.
company is, why you started it, when you started it, the name of your podcast, like all of that stuff would be super helpful.
The whole spiel. Yes, happy to do it. So I started Chicago Super Sitters in 2010, which is so fucking crazy to say. Yeah, so a little over 14 years ago as we record today. And I was a longtime nanny. I'd worked in childcare for a long time. I have background as an actor, so I was supporting myself as a nanny and part-time sitter through college and when I got to Chicago. And I wasn't interested in doing the food service hustle anymore. And so I started nannying and I had a full-time schedule made up of several part-time families. And so people were already asking me about it, you know, hey Tori, can you babysit? No, I can't. Oh, well, do you have a friend that can? Because I worked with so many families, it was also always sort of a race to get to me first. And so this was right as the other big sites were really taking off, the ones that everybody's heard of. Excuse me. And so at that time, using the internet was still like really new and fancy and like, oh my God, I can get my babysitter online. This is so cool. And so my service, I always joke that the easiest way to describe this is that the big babysitter sites are to babysitting what Match.com is to dating, and I am to babysitting what a matchmaker is to dating. So same ultimate end product, but we're more hands-on and we do the interview, reference check, background check, full vet of all of the sitters, and then hand match them to families based on age of the babies, age of the kids, number of kids, pets, location, how nervous the parents are, how nervous the kids are, any special needs, all of this stuff. So through our vetting process, we're able to match people based on more than availability, is what we say. So we survived the pandemic, which was a remarkable feat considering there weren't a lot of people looking for part-time babysitters during that time. We tried to make a quick pivot to doing nanny work at the beginning of 2020, but something we may talk about today, nannies and babysitters are very different things. The expectations are different. The role is different. Parents being in the house is different. It was just a different role. And, you know, people were scrambling for a solution in March and April and early May. But once we hit summer and the kids weren't going back to school, parents just sort of figured it out and it wasn't. So came back in, jumped in both feet again in 2022 and have really expanded our services, not just from Chicago, but we're now doing events and wedding placements nationally. And so if you need us to support a large wedding or a large corporate event, we will definitely be talking about corporate childcare support today. It is something we can help with. Just because it's for one day doesn't mean you should sacrifice the quality of the people in there. If you are paying and investing for people to attend your wedding or people to attend your conference and you want them to be able to pay attention and you want them to be able to celebrate with you, their children need to be taken care of. Yeah, so focusing on in-home childcare in Chicago at chicagosupersitters.com. Heard it here first, breaking the news on my favorite podcast. Super Sitters is in the middle of a glow up right now. So if you visit supersitters.com in the fall of 2024, you will see it one way. But if you are listening to this after early fall 2024, you will see an all new Super Sitters and be connected to Super Sitters weddings, Super Sitters events, and Super Sitters screeners where we can help you screen other people. So all of that to say, I too am someone that is without my own human children, deeply, deeply immersed in the childcare world and the part-time childcare world, which is a very nuanced piece of the childcare planet as we discuss it. I have a lot of experience in screening sitters. Katie, you asked in sort of the question before I went off onto this very rambly intro here about what have I seen change in these 14 years? And I mean, the generation of who my sitters are have shifted to almost 3 times. The way we screen, the way they interview, quite honestly, the professionalism I'm able to expect and still fill a roster. I've had to lower expectations in some ways. finding grace for parents who don't want to go back to work and hate that they have to hire childcare, so are really mad at the childcare. People who are mad at pricing for childcare because of what everybody learned during COVID. It's when you're the small business, as it happens so often, when you're the small business between the consumer and what they want, you're going to get screamed at and yelled at for the cost of stuff because Bezos, we call it the Bezos effect around here. People think they can just return stuff or keep the wrong thing that they were sent and they'll just get sent a new one or send it back broken. And, childcare is humans. It's our kids. It's literally the foundation of everything we apparently fight for, yet miraculously forget to manage. It's a really fucked up world, and I'm really trying hard to speak about it in a positive light because it's very easy to be negative about it, but I'm really hoping that today we can discuss it as sort of why it's relevant to everybody. This isn't just relevant to parents. It's not just relevant to women. It's not just relevant in certain places. It is relevant in order to make our country start turning more easily and more gently. Like it should not be full of these fucking childcare potholes anytime anyone tries to do anything.
Ooh.
There you go. There was a spiel. How'd that go? Did that hit those points?
I loved it. Congratulations on the new site. I know it is many years in the making.
Thank you.
And I will say, you and I know each other through Emily, who did both of our websites at one point.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very excited for you.
Thank you. It's wild. It's been, reflecting on everything that Super Sitters has done in these last 14 years, especially in talking about this glow up and bringing in all of the elements of all of the things that I do and we do. And seeing it listed this way and seeing like the iterations of our logo. And this used to be, here's a funny little inside scoop. When I first started Super Sitters, I was talking to a friend of mine who his brother was an animator at Disney. And so when he helped design the Super Sitter, the first send back to me was like a really hot Disney princess looking person, but like in knee-high boots and underpants and like a sports bra. And I was like, this is really cute. And I love the big red curls, but her belly button can't be showing on this logo. Like, this isn't porn babysitter. This is actual babysitter. Thank you. So the number of times it's come through. So thank you for those kudos, Kara. I'm excited. This is, it's going to be an exciting wrap to this year for sure.
Not porn babysitter. I just had to jump in and just highlight that, like, this is like, you say, give me a logo about a babysitting company, and that's what dudes come up with.
And she's got tits and ass and a belly button. Yeah. I mean, like, thank you, but no, that is not, I'm not showing up to a parade as my mascot dressed like that. Thank you so much. Could you imagine? No.
I didn't. Okay, I congratulated you, but I didn't actually ask you a question. Okay, so I want to touch on something you said, right? So, listeners, if you've made it this far, and I hope that you have, and you do not have children, why is this? Paint a picture for us, I guess, of why this is relevant to everyone. And I think one of the things we talked about before we hit record was childcare is a feminist issue. Scratch that. Childcare is a human rights issue.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean to you?
Yeah.
So one thing, that I don't think that
I just want to say but also to the people who are also listening, who are past their childbearing years, who are like, senior citizens, like, why should they care? Like that kind of, totally, all of it.
So one thing that we talk about a lot in this country is the right to not have children, and how it is my choice to have children, and it is my choice to live the life that I live. And it is also the choice of people that have children to have children. Hopefully, we're making a bunch of assumptions here, but those that want them, can work to have them. And so whether we choose to or not, having children and growing our population, people having families, is a goal of many human beings in our lives. And so as much as we, some of us without children get told a lot like, well, you don't have kids, you don't understand how it is, or you don't know how hard it is, or the assumption that our lives are inherently just easier because we don't have kids. In a lot of ways, that's true. But we also have to be respectful of those that choose to have children. If we want the respect for our life choices, we need to accommodate as a society to accommodate their choice as well. This isn't a choice of like, I don't know, do I have fruit trees in my front yard and like we've got to deal with rotting fruit, one neighbor of 1,000? Like that's such a weird example. But like this is a part of our society. And if we're going to talk about working as a collective, solving this childcare problem is important for us too. Why? Getting to your original question. Well, if we want women to be a part of the workforce, whether you are that woman or you know someone that is, and that workforce meaning like working in society, choosing to be able to do the career that they want to do, whatever it may be, we have to solve childcare because we are not at a place where childcare is evenly seen as a male and a female problem, a mom and a dad problem. So from where I sit, we need to get women in positions of power to change the way these things are handled. We cannot get and keep women in these positions of power until we solve a childcare issue, until women stop having to choose, do I have a career or am I a mom? Because there was that, the great plight of all of the, the late 80s and the 90s and the early aughts that you can have it all. You can have it all. Well, you fucking can't. You can't. You can't and have a happy marriage and have all of your needs met and have all of this unless you're also simultaneously a multimillionaire, because that's just the way that it fucking is. Like and we're not going to get evenly spread responsibility between parents until we have people at the table deciding what that looks like. Men have chosen not to step up to that role, so we need to get women in there to get it fixed. Similarly to, I don't have a car, but I pay taxes to help pay the roads because what I need to do uses those roads to get back and forth. Your coworkers that work on your team, if any of them have children, it is in your best interest to make sure that they have solid and safe childcare so that your team member isn't having to choose, do I hold up my end of the bargain and not sleep so I can finish my part of this project? Or do we provide backup so that they don't have to miss days and days of work when their child is sick? The after school epidemic, we can't, we talk about crime in this country. We talk about fixing all of these solutions or finding these solutions to these kids with nothing to do or these lower income families. Well, guess what's really fucking expensive? Childcare. Guess what's impossible to find, even at my agency, who's been doing this forever and am paying people and actively seeking people to do this, is this after school time period. This 3 to 6, this 2:30 to 7, whatever it happens to be. Well, if you can't afford childcare and your school is not providing after school care and you can't get out of work at 3 o'clock, guess what position you're faced with? Do you let your kids go home by themselves, or do you quit your job and try to find something else to make that work? Well, an impossible situation. And so the direct connection between kids being left by themselves to just do what they do because that's what kids do is another symptom of the childcare problem. So this isn't just talking about like finding nannies or finding babysitters for date nights. When we talk about solving a childcare problem, we're lifting the mental health of literally every human, because we then become more supported as a society because more of the members of our society aren't sleep deprived, broken, crazy.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Thank you for explaining that, Tori. I'm like cheering over here on mute. Like everything you're saying is it's so like incredible, honestly, but it's also so sad that parents are dealing with this stuff. Like I think, before we met today, like you had sent us, which I will put in the show notes, a New York Times piece by Vivek Murphy, the Surgeon General, about how there is a major problem. It was is there an executive order or something? Like it's like about like there needs to be help in the childcare realm, basically, is what he's officially announcing this, which is not common for a surgeon general to address something like this head on. And so I think
public health crisis, I think. Is that what he called it?
Yeah, public health crisis. And it's really interesting because I think it's like, from my perspective of my inner circle, I guess you could say, of people that I know that have children, it's been really interesting just as someone in my mid 40s that chose not to have kids. I thought I was going to have kids and then decided not to and then couldn't and then whatever. And now I don't. And I'm happy that I don't. But like, I have seen, and this is within like a population that is very privileged, very privileged. I have seen a level of stress in parents that is beyond. I mean, it's beyond. Like, I guess I don't know how to explain it otherwise. And that's just me just hearing from my friends, witnessing them, trying to give them hugs and be there for them. I just think that there is such an incredible lack of attention that this issue is getting. Like, and it's not a coincidence that still in 2024 this seems to be a female issue. And it's like, it really, I mean, I'm just now rambling, but like one of the other pieces that you sent that I will also put in the show notes was fascinating, full fucking mic drop. I would love to hear you talk about this, which is basically around the concept that more women entered the workforce and were encouraged to enter the workforce during World War II, and that the US actually helped to subsidize childcare. And then those programs were rolled back because as a society, we all weren't ready for women to actually have the same rights. And so, like, I would love to just hear what you have to say, Tori, because the level of stress, anxiety, and like always feeling like they're not good enough is coming from my inner circle. I think everyone listening can probably identify at least 5 people that they know that are dealing with this issue. And these are people of privilege. And so I cannot even imagine what people of other demographics are dealing with. That wasn't a question, but I'm just like
No,
anything you have to say.
I mean, I knew about this World War II thing, but I dug into it more in prep for this. And when I tell you that I was like screaming when I was reading some of these comments. So just to give a little backstory on this, we've all heard of Rosie the Riveter, or familiar with the image of the woman with the, the muscle up in the machinist suit with the, we can do it. Well, the story behind that was when all the boys were called up to war in World War II. The women were the ones that stepped in and worked in the factories to keep manufacturing moving, to keep the world producing, during this war. Well, they realized with women working, suddenly they needed to do something with the children. And so my big takeaway was, you all motherfuckers, you can figure this out. You figured this out then. You just stopped figuring it out because this is immediately, like, statistically, you look at the data, it's so stark that this would be the answer to this. So basically what happened was there was something passed called the Lanham Act. And it was to provide emergency or quick funding for building homes, building manufacturing facilities to keep the defense production moving. And so they found a loophole in 1942 to use this, saying they needed it to build daycares, which was furthering the production so women could work in these factories. So they opened these things called war nurseries, which was where women could drop the kids off right when she walked in the door, go in, work at the factory, come out. Some of them even provided hot meals for her to take home with her. So like, I don't want to misunderstand here. People know what the fucking problem is. People knew mental load then, and it was simply to be able to get production out of them. So as you said, Karen, the funding expired. Some people fought for it. It lasted a little longer in some states in general, but they stopped the funding for it in 46. It only lasted for 3 years. And it cost then about 50 to 75 cents a day, which, based on my research, in the early 2020s, it would cost upwards of $14 a day now to do that same thing. And so some people push back, and it started then. Katie, one of your earlier questions was about like the history of this and how have I seen this change. people were really opposed to this funding and opposed to this childcare because at this time it was, we want women in the home. We don't think it's good for children. Daycare didn't really exist in this country until the Second World War because of this. There was no option, and you were a terrible mother if you weren't home with your babies, and you were, your job was to do this. And so there was a big coalition. Oh my God, I keep hitting my microphone like a rookie. I there was this big coalition around keep the women at home, keep the parents at home. But much like Jance Dance Vance out here right now saying, well, let's call our grandparents, let's call our aunts and uncles. Like they have jobs too, maybe, or maybe they're dead, or maybe like these aren't options. And I want to call myself out. I have suggested this on my podcast as well, that if you have a network of people to say, hey, can you help with this? Can you ask grandparents? Can you get creative? I don't mean to suggest that that's the only solution. I'm saying that this is like a Band-Aid over this gashing jugular right now that I can't solve it either. And so it's just this really, I encourage everybody to read the link. Katie said you're going to put it in the notes, but it really is just such an unbelievable example of, yes, Elizabeth Warren was right. Yes, this would work. Yes, this is a solution that is needed. In order for women to go to work, we need to find something to do with the children. And the corporate childcare that exists right now is not solving the problem, which maybe we'll get into a little later, but I don't want to jump to another soapbox until I throw it back to you guys. But yeah, so when you think of Rosie the Riveter, just remember they gave Rosie the Riveter childcare so they could put her beautiful ass on a poster and show you how they were putting her to work. But they also provided her the solution that they're not providing right now, with even higher and more extreme expectations of what she's supposed to produce.
Livid. It all makes me livid. Thank you very much for that. Thank you for that history lesson, Tori. What the fuck?
Welcome.
I had no idea.
What the fuck history? That's what we can call it.
I mean,
yeah.
Oh my gosh, but drunk. So,
yes.
I realized I wanted to take a step back because I feel like we all, of course, know parents and moms and all of the things. And I feel like I would like to take a step back to paint a picture of what this crisis, when people talk about the childcare crisis, when you're talking about this problem that needs fixing, even just financially, what we're talking about. I know highly educated women who realized it was not worth it for them to work because of the cost of their childcare. So I don't know if you can just paint us even a financial picture of like what we're talking about when we talk about this as a crisis.
Yeah. So first I want to outline the very big difference between an in-home nanny and a daycare and a Montessori and a preschool. In-home nanny is a privilege. When we talk about universal childcare, or when I talk about it anyway, I am not saying everybody should get a nanny. There are nannies out here. There are sometimes I think of shutting down my business and going and getting a job as a nanny myself, because there's some of them are out here making six figures, big six figures. And they're working sometimes 50 or 60 hours a week because, again, we're talking about helping make a career possible. Being a parent, being a mom, a stay-at-home mom, is a full-time fucking job. Full stop. It may not look the same as other jobs, but it is a full-time job. So if both parents are working full-time jobs, there's a third full-time job out here needing to be done. So I consider the nanny role, it's incredible. It's great if you can afford it, but I would say an average in a big city, you're looking at sometimes $80,000, between $50,000 and $80,000 a year, maybe over 100. Some of the big nannies, if they're splitting it between, and these are full benefits, full time off, full contracted, taxes taken out, full deal, but big deal. This is not accessible for most American homes. So then we have preschool, which is typically, there's an educational curriculum to it. These teachers have specific expectations of where they're going, or what they're teaching and what their skill set is. So depending on where that is, that can sometimes be $30,000 a year. I mean, like a full human salary, upwards of 50 or 60 in some cities. I'm giving very general numbers because it really does vary so much state to state and city to city, and what your daycare or Montessori or preschool can provide. Daycare oftentimes is seen as daycare, safe, fed, alive, played with. Daycare or preschool implies, maybe some circle time, maybe some more educational, better, bigger curriculum. Montessori is, still less structured because of just the principles of the teaching system. But very focused, very specific education and background of your teachers. So depending on where you go, this could be between $20,000 and $100,000 a year, depending on where you live, how many kids. That's another thing, especially when you add a second child to the mix. It is cheaper to get a nanny because then you're also getting your laundry done. You also have backup if one of your kids gets sick and has to stay home from school. Well, luckily nanny's there with the other baby anyway. So there's lots of things to think about. But the cost is a factor in whether or not to have children or not. I mean, this is something that has come up. And as I talk to families that are saying, we're weighing, we want to do daycare, but neither one of us can miss work. And if she gets a teething fever, which means she isn't really sick, for those of you without parents, babies often get fevers when they're getting their teeth. It doesn't mean they're sick. It's just their body's like, but as soon as there's a fever that shows, they can't go to school. They can't be around the other kids because the daycare isn't going to decipher what fever means what. So parents have to stay home for a teething fever with a baby that's not actually sick. Now, are you pissed at your daycare, or are you pissed at your job for not providing the flexibility for you to work from home that day? So I kind of meandered off of that point a little bit. When we talk about the crisis of this, it's parents are surprised by the numbers and the cost of doing this. And it really is a factor of, do I buy a house or do we go into daycare? Do we move out of the city? Like, if the cities want to retain families and cities want to figure out some urban planning shit here where we want to keep people and keep young folks in the cities, then y'all need to build some affordable daycares, because people can't do this. People can't afford your rent and your mortgage rates and your fucking city taxes and your school, and they can't get into a daycare close enough to their house, so they have to drive somewhere, and then they have to apply to get into this elementary school because the other elementary school is this, but there's no after school program. Like, talk about the stress of it all. They're being faced with, like, do you eat a bag of diarrhea or do you eat a bag of dog diarrhea? There's no difference. It's bullshit either way. Sorry, that was
Wow.
really, that got real dark real
No,
fast.
I mean, that's a like, perfect visual. I mean, the numbers that you're talking about, Tori, I mean, I hate to say that I'm not, the only reason why I'm not surprised is because I had a friend when I was in my early 20s who was making 85 grand a year as a nanny in San Francisco for a very wealthy family. And I'll never forget, the only reason why I know that is because she would be going on these lavish European vacations, and I was making like 32 grand. Like, along with all of my friends. And so I was like, how are you? What are you? And she's like, oh no, I make 85 as a nanny. And I was like, I'm sorry, like, that's more money than I could have even conceived of. And so it's also just, though, like, that level of cost across the board. And I know that you said that these are general numbers, but still, it's like, even if those are averages, that would mandate that a person would have to have such an enormously high salary to even consider it makes so much sense why women are just leaving their jobs. Like, Karen, what you just said, like, highly educated women leaving their jobs. And I mean, this is now jumping a little bit, but, like, I guess I wonder, like, for people who are listening to this thinking, like, shit, like, my God, this is so awful. Is there anything that, like, the average person can do about this? Like, I would imagine voting for people who are pro universal childcare, or, like, what is a model that would be hopeful to you, Tori, if it was
Yeah.
actually happening? And what would be helpful for the average person to do to even, like, lend a hand in this way?
Yeah. I want to just, before I jump to that question, I want to just back up just a tiny bit and make sure that I add, there are also nannies that are exploited and way underpaid because of their role. And another part of this is like something that parents are faced with is sacrificing safety and quality in order to afford what they can do. So like the rates are exorbitant and all over the place, but it also means that some people are forced into unsafe, unfair, or illegal situations in order simply to make it work. So there are both sides of that. But to your question about what can we do, like what actionable items here, I think like anything when it comes to an issue based in women's issues, I'll be perfectly honest, we need the voices of men. We need the voices of men, and we need, you know, we talked about this, my co-host of my podcast, Eric, and I, we've talked about this before about when a 25-year-old man is hired, is his skills. We might talk about like, are you married? Yeah, I'm dating one. Yeah, it's great, 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 great. When a woman is hired, they can't ask it, but it is assumed probably that there will be some family planning involved there. And when she's taking a job, the person hiring them assumes, or let's assume it's a little while later, if she is known to be a mom, they assume she's going to have to miss some work. It is not assumed that a dad is going to have to miss some work. So as we're sitting here, men, if you are negotiating for a new job, saying what kind of parental leave is offered, or if it's called mother's leave, or if they're referencing something in any of your documentation about a mother's helper or assist her, correct it, call it out. This is not a woman's issue. It is not. Women cannot create babies on their own. And again, I'm going to try and stay limited to one soapbox at a time here, but so just like anything else, being the voice in the room, if you are someone without your own children, but you have people on your team that are parents saying, hey, what kind of childcare policy? Like this is something as someone even without kids look at in a new job offer. What childcare are they offering? Because even though you will not take advantage of the childcare, it is indicative of the awareness they have of women and bigger issues at this company. So using your voice and recognize childcare as it's not just babysitters. It's not just nannies. This is a fundamental solution. I mean, we saw what happened in COVID when the childcare infrastructure fell apart. I'm gonna tell you what, whenever I think of childcare, I think of those beach houses that they always show right at a hurricane where they're on those rickety ass 2x4s. And you're like, how in the hell does this house sustain waves on a daily basis? Never mind a hurricane. Like, is the house going to collapse under this hurricane? Don't know. Maybe. Like, childcare is holding on by those little saltwater soaked 2x4s. So we all have to talk about it. This is not an issue unique to moms or even just unique to moms and dads. Using our voices and recognizing where childcare is relevant and available in your sphere, whether that's work, your church, your volunteer spot. Another shout out to my girl, Elizabeth Warren. In the caucuses in 2020, she provided childcare at the Iowa caucuses so that people could caucus into the night knowing it would be a long time. That's the shit that we need to recognize.
Ooh, I love a soapbox. And I love that point because it reminds me, yes, that like that is something that we can do in all of the spaces we're in. If you want moms in the room, if you want parents in the room, and oh, by the way, you desperately do because they are the best fucking multitaskers on earth. Like you want something done, give it to a busy person who's busier, who are some of the busiest people we know, moms. So you want them in the room and to really push for providing childcare wherever we are. Tori, you and I so grateful to have bowed out for now of the like women's entrepreneur community in Chicago, which really, we could do many, many episodes about that. But right, like how many things were we at? Conferences in the middle of the day, all kinds of things that acted as if there weren't any parents in the room. And I love that idea of like really pushing organizers of things and everyone around us, like,
and
put
it in your budget. Yeah. Put it in your budget. When you talk about you're going to allot $8,000 for fucking sandwiches for your conference's lunch, add an extra $1,000 to have a child room so that the breastfeeding parent can bring their baby with them, but not have to hold them the whole time. And I don't know what it's going to take to get through to employers that when you provide the support, the turnover of your staff is going to be lower. People are not going to leave a job as quickly if they know that their role as parent is seen as a legitimate role. And I'm talking men and women, moms, dads, same-sex couples, non-gendered couples, whatever this looks like. This leave should be baked in. And yeah, not everybody uses it, but you know, like I don't use the roads in whereverville, but like my fucking federal taxes pay for shit I don't use or see all the time. Like it's just, we need to decide here, are we going to help fix the society and lift this up, or are we going to be spoiled little bitches and only solve our own problems? I've lived the spoiled bitch life. I don't want to do that. I'm tired of seeing my friends stressed out. I'm tired of hearing my business owner friends like falling apart because they just can't do it all. Like it's just, this isn't working.
No, not at all. I mean, what about, I'd love to talk with you in more depth about the corporate daycare situation because I actually don't know anything about this. Like
Sure.
I really feel like I don't know, like, are there corporations that offer daycare on site? Like what does the landscape look like right now?
So there's a few different options, and some companies take it very seriously, and you can tell have written it. I encourage you, whoever is out here listening, to ask about your leave policy, ask about your childcare policy, ask if there are any sort of childcare benefits beyond just the childcare tax credit, or your FSA, beyond those benefits does the company offer others? And I'm talking in the line items of like a gym membership or like a parking stipend or things like that. Things that they're using to entice you to come in, because it was a very hot button thing, especially after COVID. And there are some companies, there's a lot of hospitals and a lot of people that have high expectations of long hours of their employees that will have on-site daycares. Um, doctors and nurses, especially, like the hospitals are typically good about that. But much like other places, it does not solve for the problem if anybody is sick or a child is sick or your staff is sick. But put a pin in that for a second. So other corporations employ what we call, in my company, we call it checkbox childcare, meaning they had a conversation about childcare. And there are a couple of big companies out here that will partner with large corporations and say, yeah, we can offer this as a perk to your people. They'll get a discount on the membership, with the access to all of these things, which can either be like an ad hoc drop off at a daycare, like your nanny's sick or your school is closed. So certain daycares will partner with this larger company. So if there's an open spot in a room, someone can drop a kid off. Well, okay, in a pinch, that's a fine solution. Does not account for where they live. Again, it does not account for kids being sick. Doesn't account for if the child has any sort of a special need, if there's any sort of dietary anything, doesn't give the school any heads up. If that kid is anywhere between the ages of like 7 months and 4, they could have a complete fucking meltdown about the new of it all. Like it's just not it's a solution if you just want to check off your checkbox childcare. Like they're safe, but that shouldn't be our bar. Like that shouldn't be the lowest bar. Or they offer a stipend. They offer a stipend to go with this big company to do a search on their own. Well, no shade to that search, but I know absolutely approximately 0 parents that will have the time at 5:30 in the morning to get on a big website and say, hey, my kid has, an unknown fever. We haven't been able to get into the doctor yet. Can anybody come in and help me? Like, it's just not realistic. So the solution is technically there because there's a childcare option for them written into this benefit package, but it's not an actual fucking benefit. It's not, it's like, what if they don't have a car? What if they can't, there's all of these things. And so this brings me back to the point of needing people at the table who actually understand what childcare is, because the corporate 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 childcare can work. We've seen it work, but it also, without subsidies to the people that are providing it. Like, we've dabbled in it and we're now trying to figure it out. But the deal is if I want to provide guarantee backup care for your entire corporation, that means I need to have 5 or 6 nannies like on full-time salary, on retainer, just available, ready to go to maybe see for after a sick kid. So is that up to the childcare industry to solve, or is that up to putting into law some understanding and some stipulation that if people miss a day of work because their kid is, you know, I don't know, has hand, foot, and mouth so bad their skin is peeling off, which, shout out to my sweet little baby. You know who you are. I don't think you listen to our podcast, but I love you and I'm so glad you're getting better. These shit, like when kids get sick, it can wreck them for a while, which then means their parents aren't sleeping, which then means nobody's sleeping and everybody's sick and they go to work and they get their coworkers sick. Or parents fill their kids up with Tylenol to hopefully get 3 hours worth of work in the morning and then gets everybody else at the daycare sick and we start this whole fucking thing again. So without an infrastructure to help, we know kids get sick. So let's figure out a solution. What does that look like? We know parents get sick. We all know we can work from home. So maybe we all fucking loosen the reins a little bit here and let people be the best judgment of where they get their work done and how they can be their best parent and stop policing people like they're fucking 7-year-olds.
Deep breaths.
Sorry. Yeah. I
Oh
get
my
really
gosh.
fired up about this stuff because I just seeing people suffer with these decisions and these two, diarrhea A or diarrhea B options. It doesn't need to be like this. It really doesn't. If we can figure it out, in the fucking 40s, certainly we can figure it out now.
Oh my gosh. I feel like that's a mic drop.
Vote.org. Get your shit checked. Check it. Vote. Vote is the most effective way to help with this. Sorry, I stepped on your mic drop. Please.
Oh no. I just that was a mic drop. And I will say my full-time employer just had a story about corporate benefits. And so I know the statistic that according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, only 12% of all workers in the United States had access to child care benefits through their employer in 2023. But that does not just that doesn't give you insight into what that means. What does child care benefits mean? We don't know, right? Like you described. So
this is also, and I know this is not what we're talking about here, and we're getting ready to land this plane, so I don't want to open this door here, but this is a reason I also get very, very, very fired up when we talk about not letting women control and access what happens and what grows inside their own bodies, because I could stand and scream and yell for longer than the 40 minutes I just did about how we are not set up in this country to accept more babies, whether they're wanted or not. We do not have the infrastructure to manage a growing population with the existing lack of childcare that is right now. So if these clown shoes are going to start forcing us all to Handmaid's Tale, they better get some fucking daycares open. That went off the rails and was not actually what I wanted to say, but I feel like you knew where I was going. And they can't have it both ways. We're going to, whatever, it's a different podcast, different day, but this affects all of us. It really does. And if you stop to think of how the people in your life with children, how they exist in this world, in this country, what they contribute, who they contribute to, the kind of children they're hoping to raise to be able to contribute to our society. Like, that's another thing, another reason that we don't talk about this a lot, or what we don't talk about is supporting these kids' parents, and it helps make them better parents. Better parents raise better kids. And better kids, I mean, I don't think I need to explain why that's a gift to all of us, but like, we need to solve this for a lot of reasons. And the mental health of our parents and our children and our friends and our sisters and our brothers and our families, like, this is in the balance here.
Wow, Tori. I mean, thank you for a million reasons, but really thank you for being willing to talk about this, honestly, because I just think that there are not a lot of people with your level of expertise in the position that you're in who are speaking out for real about this. And so I really hope that this episode gets to a lot of people, because I actually think that your point of view is just so incredibly valuable. I think it's going to be actually really eye-opening to a lot of people. But before we go, I want to make sure people can find you. So can you talk about the name of your podcast, how they can find you, what your website is, what your socials are, because I want them to keep following you to like keep this conversation going.
Yes, thank you so much. So you can find me on Instagram at Toady Beans. Most of that is dog and renovation content. To find Super Sitters, you will find us at Super Sitters Official on all channels. You can find us at www.chicagosupersitters.com. You can also find us at www.supersitters.com, which will have a fresh glow up in the next little bit. You can also find us at www.superscreeners.com, which is a platform that I created during COVID to help you screen your sitters. Basically, if you don't live in Chicago, but you want some support to have the safety within the people that you're hiring, you can hire us to pump people through our screening system and help give you recommendations of who we think would be a good match. Our content's also just really fun and really real, and we have a lot of good points and feedback, and we understand that we're not accessible to everybody, so we offer a lot of tips on how to do this on your own if you need to, and a lot of more soapboxing stuff from me. The podcast is called Childcare WTF. You can find this on all platforms. We were a little delayed getting our new season started back up again because I have just finished a giant house renovation and couldn't put one more thing on my plate. So we're starting a little bit later, but we'll be talking about all things relevant, similar to this conversation, regarding how it affects your vote and how you can vote for childcare and what that would look like, including candidates that support it, and ways to, provide childcare to those that want to go volunteer while voting, whatever that might look like. So, yeah, any questions, always reach out to me. I'm always happy to support parents that aren't sure about this or that have questions. Or if you'd like me to come on your podcast and soapbox and rant and rave, I would love to do that as well. Get me out there, get me in front of the people that can make the changes, because I have a lot to say. And thank you both, as always, for having me on here and giving me this platform to talk about this very important stuff.
I'm just gonna let you and Katie. Tori, thank you so much for being with us. And yeah, I'm sure we'll see you again soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, guys.
For sure. As Tori or Ginger Buddha or both, same person.
Or all.
Yep. Or all. Yes. Thank you again. We'll see everybody next week.